I was thinking the best way to explain the 18-300mm Tamron lens is to use one of these. I'll explain in the video. Hi everyone, welcome to Pal the Tech. Today we're taking a look at the new Tamron 18-300mm zoom lens for Fujifilm X-mount. Before we continue, a disclaimer. Tamron did loan me this lens for 2 weeks to test and review, but just like always, this review is completely independent. Tamron did not pay me to do this review, nor were they involved in its creation. Also, they were not allowed to see this video until it's now been published. Taking this lens out of the box, I was struck by how lightweight it is compared to how much range you're getting. It tells you loud and clear that it was designed in Japan, but it was made in Vietnam. Now, the price of this lens, as of the date of this video, is $700. It's mostly solid plastic with metal construction on the mount end. You also get this included lens hood. The lens weighs about 620 grams, has 7 rounded aperture blades, and contains 19 elements in 5 groups. And this bears repeating. This lens will give you a focal range of 18-300mm. That's the full frame equivalent of about 27-450mm. All told, this lens will give you a 16.6 times zoom ratio. The lens itself contains 2 rings, one to adjust the focal length and the other to adjust the focus. There is no aperture ring on the lens itself. You instead adjust the aperture using the front command dial on the camera. There's a lock switch on the lens as well to lock the lens in place when it's fully collapsed. Obviously, this is there to prevent the lens from accidentally extending during travel, but I don't think that that's much of a concern. The zoom itself has more torque than the other zoom lenses that I've used. Maybe a bit too tight for my taste, but that's my own personal preference. The maximum aperture range on this lens is from f3.5 to f6.3, while the minimum aperture range is from f22 to f40. Now, the minimum focus distance at the 300mm end of the lens is 39 inches, while at the 18mm focal length, your minimum focus distance is 5.9 inches. But you will be butting right up against the lens at that range. Let's now take a look at the image quality. I found the color rendering to be more on the muted side, with slightly less saturation than with, say, Fuji's 55-200mm zoom. The colors have a nice, pleasing look to them that I like. When you're zoomed all the way in at 300, you're limited to an f-stop of f6.3. In real-world photos, I found the background to be pleasing, even at that narrower aperture. The issue you will run into is having to increase the ISO. So here's the deal. At 300mm, if you want to have a blurred background but a sharp subject, you are going to have to use a faster shutter speed to compensate for the 300mm focal length. So here in this case, I used 1/500th of a second. I probably should have gone down to maybe 1/600th of a second, or maybe even 1/650th of a second, but I shot this on an X-T4 with IBIS. The problem, and I'm sure you're already aware of this, is that at an aperture of f6.3, you're letting a lot less light in. So in order to keep the fast shutter speed so that your subject doesn't blur, you're going to need to have a higher ISO. Here, I used ISO 2000. Now, that's not the end of the world, and there's lots of adjustments that you can make in post-production to reduce ISO noise, but this is something that you should be aware of. If you're using this lens at 200mm, expect to be shooting at higher ISOs than you normally would. Here's a background comparison between f6.3 and f11. And you do have some cat eyes here at f6.3. Here we are at f5.6 at about 126mm. And here's the kind of isolation you get at f6.3 at 300mm. Now, as far as lens optical issues, I didn't notice much vignetting or fringing. However, something to keep in mind is you will definitely want to get the latest update to Lightroom or Photoshop to make sure that you have the correct built-in lens profile for this lens. Now, I did notice some lens flaring for sure. It's definitely there in wider apertures, but look at this big starburst as you stop down the lens. Now, autofocus in AFS mode is quite good, and Face-Eye Auto Detect really hits the mark fairly regularly. It nailed pretty much all of these photos, except when she had her eyes closed. When using the AFS mode, I found that the autofocus was very fast and accurate. Both zone and wide tracking performed fairly well, and I didn't have very many issues. It followed the subject much in the same manner as the 55 to 200mm Fuji lens. AFC for stills wasn't bad either, but that was one area where I sort of ran out of time with my testing. But from what I was able to test with AFC in stills, it did a pretty good job. According to Tamron, this lens comes equipped with vibration compensation. However, if you are going to be shooting at 300mm, it really helps to mount this lens on a camera that has IBIS, such as the X-T4. Handheld, okay? And with my awful caffeinated shaky hands, I was able to get shots to about 1/30th of a second handheld with IBIS at 300mm. Below that, it was just too soft, and I would need a tripod at that focal length and shutter speed. I'd like to talk a bit now about shooting video with this lens. To put it simply, I would almost never shoot video with it using the camera's video autofocus. I found that it had trouble nailing focus when I had the camera in video mode at AFC. Also, you would never want to zoom in and out, as you can see how this looks. Still, it wasn't bad all the time with AFC for video, and when it did work, it was fast. However, with regard to maintaining accurate video autofocus on a consistent basis, I think that Tamron still does have some work to do in that area. Now, when you combine this lens with optical image stabilization built into cameras like the X-T4, you can see a huge difference, especially at the 300mm focal length range. So here's the question of the day. Who is this lens for? More than any other lens that I've used, this lens is all about how you approach it. This is not the highest quality zoom lens out there, and it certainly doesn't stack up next to the 50 to 140. However, for the $700, you are getting one hell of a wide range of apertures in a relatively light and compact size. So it comes as no surprise that this lens is a great super value zoom travel lens first and foremost. It will have you covered with a focal length for any scenario that you can throw at it. And if you combine this lens with a camera that has IBIS, such as the X-T4 or the X-H1, you'll have an easier time with video. It's the video autofocus in AFC that needs future improvement in future generations of this lens, I believe. I do also wish that it could be open wider at the 300mm end, as f6.3 really does require more light, which obviously necessitates having to shoot at higher ISO values. But for the price point that this lens sells for, maybe that's being a little bit unreasonable to ask for. I do think that this lens excels at being a one travel lens to rule them all. As long as you are aware of its limitations, I think it's definitely worth considering. So, to bring this to a close, this lens is sort of like this bottle of shampoo. You get shampoo, body wash, and face wash in one handy bottle. But it's awesome because it has all three of everything in one bottle, and that's all I need to carry with me or think about. For those of you that like to travel with minimal gear but still want to have as wide a range of focal lengths as possible and are aware of some of the AFC video issues with this lens, you should definitely take a look at this Tamron 18-300. It is a great value zoom lens for Fujifilm. And to Tamron, I want to say thank you for producing this and hopefully future lenses for Fujifilm. I think it's great what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what you come up with next. But wait, before I end the show, I want to announce our newest Geariguana Hall of Fame member, David Chambers. David, thank you so much for your support. That means the world to me, and it helps out the channel so much. So without any further ado, let's get your name up on the studio wall where it will be just out of frame of the camera. Okay, let's do this. Again, a huge shout out and thank you to David and everyone else at Pal to Tech Backstage who help support the channel every single day. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out Pal to Tech Backstage, where I do a weekly coffee time and share my thoughts and share the stories behind the videos. It's a lot of fun. And a big thank you to everyone who helps support the channel. This has been a great year, and 2022 is going to be even better. And back to me, you, us, in the studio. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I'll see all of you again in a new video very soon. Take care.